y'all. Welcome to another episode of Barbershop Love Stories, Cuts in Conversation. My name is Lena West, and today my very special guest is Keith.
Hey guys.
Hey. So, Keith, tell us a little bit about your story. I know you were married before, so just kind of dive into that a little bit.
Yeah. So I met my ex-wife back in 2010, 2011. I met
Mhm.
her in college. Actually, we went to school together, but I met her at my job at college. Was working at the public library.
Oh, nice. You can
Uh,
read. I like that.
yeah. So I actually worked in circulation. She worked in the kids department. Actually, her sister was my manager. And we just ultimately became friends.
Okay.
We were friends for probably about a year. She was happened to be in a relationship with someone else. He was long distance, and over time we became close, and we just started dating, and we were together for about 12 or 13 years.
Okay, now at what point, how long did you date and at what point did you get married?
We probably dated for 4 or 5 years. Again, I was in college.
Hmm.
Herself, she was trying to figure out life, what she wanted to do with a degree, where she wanted to go in life. About 4 years in, we had a bad breakup. We
Hmm.
probably separated for about 6 months. We got back together. She ended up pregnant. We moved back in together. We lived together probably a year or two. We ended up getting married and just kind of went from there.
Okay, so we know now you're not together.
Yeah.
What happened during that period?
Um, just instability, not just having a solid ground. So when you're young, you're in relationships, you're trying to figure stuff out. But as you get older, you got to put God first. So if you don't have a solid foundation, you go through a lot. So just coming from unsimilar backgrounds, my viewpoint of life was different than hers,
Mm.
and not understanding that where we come from impacts your relationship as well. Now, therapy is pretty common. People push it, but 10 years ago, it wasn't very prevalent. So a lot of
Yeah.
times, a lot of stuff you try to deal with in the household. So,
Hmm.
you
It
argue,
was taboo,
yep,
very
yep, yep.
taboo.
So we
Right.
argue, we fight, but then sometimes when you're young, you're not necessarily listening or understanding that person, and not being open. So that just was a lot of where our friction came from.
And that's one of the things that I wanted to ask you about because you said that you guys got together when you were around about 20.
Hmm.
Do you feel like you had the skills and the tools to actually keep a relationship
Uh,
together?
Not at
Or
all.
not at all. You just diving in. We gonna
Diving,
figure it out, huh?
it's all young people. You find somebody, you think you're in love,
Yeah.
and you just deal with it, and hopefully you pray that things work out, and then you kind of see others. Say, my parents have been together for 40 something years.
Wow.
My mom was 18, my
That's
dad
nice.
was 21 or 22. But at the end, but as you get older, you realize that they dealt with stuff too. You may not
Hmm.
have seen it as a child, but there's always obstacles that you have to overcome. And even my dad, when I was married, he told me straight up, he said, if it was for me being in the Navy
Hmm.
and me being in my, mid 20s, early 30s, and being gone for 6 months at a time on those, being on the ship, he said, me and your mama probably would have never made it as well because you got a chance to miss each other.
Oh wow.
Hmm.
Do you think that's part of the key? Like
Most
to
definitely, most definitely.
yeah.
You got to go to work. You got to have time to yourselves. You can't
Hmm.
always be under the same household, and you have to have lives outside of your relationship. So, when I'm in a relationship, I'm all into the women. I don't need to hang out with males. I'm kind
Hmm.
of, long as we're together, and I'm happy in the house. But as I'm getting older, I understand that we have to have our own set of friends. We have to do things
Hmm.
outside of your relationship just for your own sanity as well, especially with the same sex. Men need to hang out with men, and women need to hang out with your women friends as well.
Yeah, I remember when because I got married when I was 18, and so I just remember thinking it was just us in this little bitty bubble. So I didn't care about anybody, any friendship. I didn't care about girls' night. I didn't care about like anything besides my little
Mm-hmm.
world.
Yep.
And like I'm a grown woman now, and I
Mm-hmm.
know that like that does not work. It
Most
doesn't work.
most
So
definitely. Yep.
definitely agree. You got to have like a full life that
Mm-hmm.
you've built by yourself and then, merge the two.
Yep.
At what point, what was like the straw that broke the camel's back, I guess I should say.
Um, we dealt with issues all throughout the years. One I think is just we're both are exhausted. Honestly, exhausted
Mm,
from fighting,
mm-hmm.
arguing, and then you throw our kid was 3 or 4 at the time, and
Mm-hmm.
just seeing her watch us argue and her feeling like she's in the middle of it and making her feel like it's her fault. But just me personally, what my last straw was, we're dealing with a lot. We were arguing, but one day she got upset and she called me the B word and a no good daddy and walked out the house. And then that was kind of my final straw where I just kind of just let it go and just tried to and started moving in a different direction.
Mm-hmm. So, knowing you, I know that you are a great dad, and that like was a huge thing for you.
Mm-hmm.
We had talked before about there are some words that you can say as a woman where it's a complete deal breaker, and in your head you may not know that it's a deal breaker for that person,
Mm-hmm.
but they're done. They've checked out.
Yeah.
It's over with the relationship. There's no coming back to,
Mm-hmm.
and so it sounds like that was absolutely the case.
Most
Yeah.
definitely, especially, I was the one taking care of the house financially. So I was paying all the bills, paying
Mm-hmm.
the car notes, insurance, household bills, and she was trying to go to school.
Mm-hmm.
And in addition to that, I was working a full time job.
Wow.
I was being a dad, when I'm hands on and, even in the house, I wash clothes, I cook, I
Mm-hmm.
clean. So not saying I'm perfect, but knowing what the effort you put into to make the family come together, that was hurtful and that was my last straw.
Did you do too much?
I
Do
think
you?
looking back on it, I think that when you're in it sometimes, because at the end of the day, it was both of our first real relationships, and I think
Mm-hmm.
sometimes people take it for granted.
So, do you think you would do you- this new relationship? Do you feel like you would do as much as you did with the last one?
Uh, I will.
Yeah.
One, I'm in a whole different mental space. For
Mm-hmm.
one, I'm 35 years old. I'm not 22.
Mm-hmm.
And then honestly, when you find that person that completes you and y'all mesh, you're willing to do it. So, even for myself, just me looking back on my marriage, I feel like I was taken advantage of in a lot
Yeah.
of
Mm-hmm.
aspects. So, me coming home every night, me giving my daughter a bath while you're working in the evening time. And, I didn't cook during the week, but on Sundays, I'm cooking Sunday dinner. I'm helping you with your family. Your mom's calling me for money. I'm letting your sister live with us for free and not paying any bills. So I think
Wow.
just really trying to do too much, and then when I separate, and then everybody just disappears. Nobody calls and
Mm-hmm.
that's my point of view. And now nobody, even when we come
Just
to,
silence.
yeah, silence, and even now, like when I go to my child's basketball games and stuff like that, I don't
Mm-hmm.
see anybody.
Wow. It sounds as if like you did a lot during that relationship, but the fact that it wasn't really reciprocated may make it look like you did too much. But when you're with somebody who's reciprocating and giving the same, it's not that bad
Yeah,
situation.
I mean, even me, even my current relationship, she's big on protecting my peace.
What does that mean?
Mm.
Because I heard somebody say that earlier today. He was like, I need her to be my peace. What does
uh,
that mean to you?
Um, now that I'm in a different headspace, so if you see you're doing too much or too much is going on,
Mm-hmm.
you're stepping in and making sure I'm not overextending myself. So just for example, me and my current girlfriend, while she was getting her house built, she stayed with me for like 4 or 5 months, and she had a nephew that lived up the street. She was staying with her dad, with his dad,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm the type of person, come over on Sunday, I'm cooking dinner. If I'm cooking in the evening time, you come over for dinner, you can go home. But on this particular day, he came over and he wanted to talk to us. But once she didn't let him come in the house, she kept him at the front door. And ultimately, what was going on is he was having I guess, some issues with his dad, and he wanted to come stay in the house with us.
Oh,
And
okay.
she just caught it before it even got to me. She
Mm-hmm.
said, "I went outside. I told him you can't stay here. Whatever you got going on with your dad, that's between y'all and you're a grown man. So
Yeah.
you can't come into his house and expect that he's going to allow you to stay because, it's not my house neither. So I'm staying here, and he's allowing
Mm-hmm.
me to stay here while I get my house built. But you can't come in and disturb our peace."
It sounds like just like a woman wants to be some kind of somewhat protected, that men in a certain aspect they kind of want to be protected in certain scenarios.
I'm learning
Like,
that now.
yeah,
Yeah, I wouldn't say protection, peace, whatever you want to call it.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
Maybe that's
yeah.
yeah,
So just like a woman wants to feel protected, if something happens, they want to know that sure that they want to know that their man's going to step in and so
right.
forth. But at the same time, man wants that same. experience. So,
Hmm.
if a man's working all the time and he's exhausted, he wants women to come in and take care of him sometimes.
Yeah. It also sounds like you want to be seen, and that's huge.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I guess just being on self identity,
Hmm.
my changing self identity. So like I've told you, I have cerebral palsy. And I've been going to counseling off and on for 5 years now. But most recent, what I've learned is that I was basing my identity on what I can do for people.
Ooh.
So
Okay.
yeah, the money I make, the
Yeah.
house I have, me being able to help someone else.
Hmm.
But now that I'm kind of tapping into my spiritual, learning more about myself, now I'm more of I want to be tapping into my emotions, my spiritualness and stuff like
Hmm.
that. So and then just knowing that I'm not just here on this earth just based on what I can do for people. I'm more than that.
So tell me about this new relationship. How did you meet?
So I've known her for about 12 or 13 years.
Hmm.
I was friends with her ex, and we kind of fell out over the years. But when we fell out, she still came around.
Hmm.
No, nothing inappropriate, but I babysit her kid. She would come to cook out sometimes and so forth.
Hmm.
And then she was a mutual friend with my ex-wife as well. But when I separated from my wife, um, we still had a rapport. So even the day actually when we were going through our separation, she just happened to call one day and say, "Hey, I'm going to so and so so and so. Can I bring Aubrey?"
Uh-huh.
So she just stopped by the house. She picked her up, and
Yeah.
she brought her back. And when she came back that evening, I called her just privately, and she stepped outside. I just want to let you know that me and my ex are going through a divorce.
Hmm.
But again, she was one of the people that she didn't choose sides. She
Yeah.
didn't switch.
Neutral. Hmm.
But sometimes it's not like that.
A lot of
Yeah,
times.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So we kept a rapport. So when I was going through my separation, she allowed me to, if I had a meeting, she allowed me to drop my kid off. She would
Hmm.
comb her hair for me or give her a bath and things like that. To me, just trying to adjust to being a single dad and vice versa. She was a single mom,
Hmm.
and her son's father wasn't as present as he should be. So just
Hmm.
me. As we became closer and things like that, I can see that she was doing everything herself. So when her son's dad was supposed to come, he wouldn't come. So not
Hmm.
only was she working, she had him 95% of the time.
Wow.
And kids are innocent, so there was the times where I would be like, "Hey, I see you're tired, so just drop your son off with me and my daughter for the weekend." And she became comfortable. So she would
Hmm.
drop him off on a Friday. She'll come back and get him on a Sunday. But how we ended up getting together, she was actually in the process of moving.
Hmm.
She called me over one day and said, "Hey, Keith, can you take a piece of furniture apart for me?"
The
Uh,
answer was yes.
yeah, but on my way there, she called and said, "Hey, my cousin, you don't have to come. My cousin already took the furniture apart,
Oh, okay.
but I lived in Conyers, she lived in Duluth, and I was 20 minutes from her house. And I said,
Hmm.
"Hey, I've come too far to go home,
To
so
turn back now.
come back
That's the
around."
old gospel song.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So
Hmm.
I came over. Her one of her cousins was there, and one of her good friends were there, and
Uh-huh.
I was the only male in the room, but nothing. We were all talking, laughing, and things like that. And as the night went on, one of her friends sat. We were sitting in a chair like this, and her friend was right across there, and she said, "Hey, have you guys ever thought about dating?"
Wow, she just put that all the way out there.
And then, but again, I had never looked at her in that
Uh-huh.
light, and she never looked at me in that light. And she looked at me, and I looked at her, and we've been dating ever since.
Listen, this is when the stars went blue, 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 blue. Here we are.
Yeah.
And you guys have been dating for how long?
It'll be 5 years in September.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, that's amazing. I also want to touch on the fact that you said that you guys go to counseling, which I thought was a different kind of thing. I hadn't heard of it until maybe a few months ago, where another one of my clients had mentioned that he's not even like engaged to his girl or anything like that, but they go to counseling. And then someone else, as a just a boyfriend girlfriend couple, they go to counseling too. So tell me about how you got to that point where, you know, y'all
Um,
decided that was a thing.
I think it was just life. So when you throw in your exes, and then just a life experience, she's been married and divorced before.
Mm.
I've been married and divorced before, and you throw in parenting, and after I got finished with my divorce, she started a custody battle.
Wow.
So and then life happens, and then with certain stuff, we just felt like we were continuing to go in cycles.
Hmm.
And then, like I told you before, 3 or 4 months in, she just told me straight up, you're gonna be my husband.
Yeah.
Um, I thought she was just talking, but
She
we're
wasn't.
still here.
Yeah.
So just more of just wanting to learn from our mistakes.
Hmm.
So one thing I learned from her is just foundation. So if you don't have the right foundation, it's
Yeah.
not gonna work. So just learning how to deal with conflict
Hmm.
and learning how to deal with parenting, and just even now the hard big topic now is since I'm co-parenting with my ex-wife, just learning how to set those boundaries and deal with certain situations, and to try to prioritize her over my ex and not trying to please
Hmm.
my ex for my child and things like that. So just really just setting that foundation, because at the end of the day we do see marriage, but she makes it. This time you want to make it right and make it,
The
last.
last.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nobody wants to do that
Yeah.
again, like a divorce.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
definitely understand that. What kind of challenges did you have getting your daughter and like,
My biggest thing was just the whole parenting time.
mm,
So once we were going through a divorce, we were going through it during COVID. So it took 8 or 9 months to go to court.
yeah.
So during that time, her mom was going to school full time. So I was basing my schedule around hers.
Hmm.
So I was getting my child 3 or 4 days a week. We would swap weekends. Even I was paying child support even before the courts made me pay child support.
Wow.
But then you finally go to court, and this man can sit there and say, "Hey, you both are good parents," but I just feel like because she's a girl, she deserves to be with her mom. You're not looking at the living situation. You're not saying, "Well, they've been doing joint parenting for the last almost a year."
Hmm.
So that was a time of grief for me. So just going to see my kid 3 or 4 days a week to every other weekend.
Oof.
Yeah,
That would be brutal. That would be
it's
brutal.
long time of grief, hurt. It took me about 3.5 years to
Yeah.
really get to the point where I'm used to it. I'm okay with it, and that's
Hmm.
even me being able to have a relationship with her mom, just kind of
Yeah.
letting it go.
Yeah, I think that's a common thing where people just assume, or those in leadership positions assume that that's the best. But I mean, I'm sure nobody really asked your kid for one how they felt about it. And then also, I remember years ago hearing that statistically, single fathers do better parenting than single mothers. Now, I don't know too much about that, but I thought that was interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah. I think one because we're dominant. So we know how to lead.
yeah.
I know with moms you need the caressing and just
Hmm.
the smoothness, but it's dads. Even with me, if I had to get my kid tomorrow, I'm okay with it. I'll adjust my life because I
Hmm.
think we always have to be leaders.
Yeah.
So yeah, most definitely, structure. Just being able to balance multiple things, and then also just kind of making them better individuals, I guess, as well. Not saying they don't need their mom,
Yeah, of
but
course.
I don't think they give men a fair chance a lot of times. And if you do get full custody of your child, they have to be abused or something like that for the courts to make that decision.
Yeah, I think the fact that you're fighting to get your child says a lot in itself. And so I don't understand what the pushback is all the time. To me, that's just very strange.
Yeah, it's just the
Um,
courts, and then a
yeah.
lot of times with the moms, if you don't have a good relationship, they try to go by the paper. So they only say you
Hmm.
can get every other weekend. You only can get them every other weekend. And then a lot of times, if you don't have that good rapport with the mom, they won't let you get them extra time, or they
Hmm.
try to use it. They try to hold it over your head at the end of the day.
What was it like being a single dad in regards to like community? Because I feel like there's resources somewhat for like single moms. What was it like to be a single dad though?
Mm, it's just more of just like you say, community, family.
Hmm.
So for me, I come from a big family.
Okay.
So my parents are here. My uncles and aunties are around and so forth.
Hmm.
So, and even like I said, my girlfriend as well. So just having those people around you to help you navigate those things and
Yeah.
things like that. So, for example, when I do have my daughter, I'm not necessarily know how to comb hair or, hygiene and things like that. So just allowing my girlfriend and my mom just being able to help her
Mm-hmm.
navigate those things as she get older. And then also just learning how to listen. So my daughter is at that age now where she's 9.
Okay, I was
Um,
just gonna ask.
yeah,
Yeah.
so us learning how to communicate as well. So,
Mm-hmm.
when you have co-parenting households, there's two different parenting styles.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, for what we're dealing with now is, when something happens, how do we deal with it? So, for example, my daughter was doing testing last week, but she's playing basketball.
Mm-hmm.
So on Monday last week, we were supposed to practice, and her mom said, "Oh, well, it's too much mental. She needs to take a break." So she didn't go to basketball practice. But then in my mind, I'm saying, hey, it's a test, but that may be something to allow you to think about something else or get away from it. So just learning how to deal with a kid when they're coming from two different parenting styles and you're going back and forth.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And then what do you see in the future for your daughter and yourself?
Most definitely getting married again. So one, just having that family dynamic, just coming together with my girlfriend and her son-in-law, just kind of being one. For me and my daughter, just continuing that growth. So
Mm-hmm.
like she's at that age now where she can kind of express herself,
Yeah.
and then she can do for herself. And then, like I said, she's playing sports now. So just me being able to be her assistant coach, train with her, and then just kind of helping her navigate those issues of life when she's dealing with it. So,
Yeah.
sometimes when you're co-parenting, they feel like they can't talk with one parent. So just being able to talk to her about certain things and just being able to work with her mom to just do it for the betterment of the kid.
Mm-hmm. She's literally 11 years away from the age that you were when got involved with her mom. Like, what kind of things do you teach her now, if
Um,
there's any? I mean,
One thing I
yeah.
always tell her: love your parents no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
So, when you're co-parenting, there's going to be times where your mom's going to upset you. There's going to be times where I upset you. But at the end of the day, one, love yourself and love your parents no matter what you're dealing with.
Mm-hmm.
And then two, don't beat yourself up too much. So life, relationships, marriage, parenting, it's always learning.
Yeah.
So just one thing I've learned just with parenting in general, there's not a handbook,
No,
and a
I
lot
wish
of,
there was.
and it's even the way that we view life and how we handle stuff. It's based on what we saw growing up. But
Yeah.
then we have to understand our parents didn't have a handbook,
Mm-hmm.
so now we're just having to navigate that and try to change some of the wrongs that we got from our parents because
Mm-hmm.
it may not necessarily be right. So just changing those things and changing them and making them better for our kids.
Yeah, I remember a few years ago, my oldest, he said that he wasn't going to spank his children.
Mm.
And so, I mean, I think that's okay for him. Like, I would never say, don't do this. I raised you this way or whatever, because it may not work. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and kids are different,
Yeah.
they respond to different things. So,
Mm-hmm.
you know,
Yeah, most definitely. Yeah.
what do you think you would tell your younger self about love and relationships?
So one, it starts with yourself. So if you don't love yourself, your relationships aren't gonna work.
Mm,
So like I mentioned, just going back to my cerebral palsy, I've always been hard on myself.
mm,
I've always wanted to be independent. I've always didn't want to help from anyone. So just love yourself. So just being able to not be too hard on you, not putting too much pressure on yourself, and just trying to be able to, when you do have those hard times, just to pick yourself back up.
yeah.
And then just when you're just being in relationships in general, just always have an open mind and listen, and just be able to receive. So one thing that I fought with just in my last relationship and what I'm learning to now is just being able to receive love.
Mm,
So it's men, a lot of times we have a I guess a hard outer coat.
yeah.
So a lot of times when a woman's trying to give us love, we fight it.
I just read an article about
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So just being able to, when you find that one you can trust and one you can love, just being
Hmm.
able to be vulnerable and just allow them to come in and be there for you as well, just as just reciprocate on both ends.
On that note, sounds like vulnerability is the key, fellas. So thank you so much, Keith, for coming and chatting with me today. I so appreciate it. Y'all make sure that you tune in to another episode. Like, share, and subscribe, and we will see y'all later.